there's this huge thing, and I know it's like hugely popular and people making a lot of money with extensions and plugins and whatnot, but there's also like a huge risk to self-hosting e-commerce products, especially if you're not willing to like invest a lot of money into a good hosting provider and having someone to actually care about the website, make updates, check everything is still working and so on. So not like I'm a fan of COVID or anything, but for that particular case, it was actually a good thing, because without COVID, I would have been busy with like client work and maybe other projects, and I would have never stumbled upon that particular use case. What you can do with Webtozip right now is like make a copy of that particular page, save it somewhere, then take a new copy in like a month from now, and then compare both with like a simple file comparison tool.
This is the Wildcloud podcast. So customers of Wildcloud are using Wildcloud to build their own Shopify, Wix, or Webflow alternative. So you can imagine if you focus on a specific functionality or specific niche, you can turn that into a product, sell it automatically, and start creating recurring revenue. The whole platform is hosted and serverless, and it introduces the scalable architecture of SaaS to WordPress called multi-tenancy. So whatever you do today, head over to wildcloud.com and have a look at how you can productize your agency or build the SaaS of your dreams using nothing but your WordPress skills. So that being said, let's dive in, shall we? I'm actually very happy that you're joining me, because it sounded like you had a lot of trouble with the email inbox that we just talked about 2 seconds ago. But it sounds like you're going to have a really quiet day without getting any emails, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are upsides and downsides. The downside obviously is that I didn't get any invite link to our little podcast session here. But the good thing is I also don't get any emails if something is going wrong. So I keep it up to my team to handle the worst part of the day. And just
are you a person that sleeps with his phone in his bedroom, or do you leave it like in the house?
Usually I leave it in the house, and even if I take it close to my bed, it's still completely muted and no notifications are going through.
Oh, I'm very impressed. Do you have a analog normal alarm clock?
Yeah, I have one. I even considered buying one of these. There are these like little feature phones or so. They only have like a black and white screen and no WhatsApp and no social media. And I honestly considered buying one of them, but my girlfriend was just absolutely not impressed with the idea that I'm no longer available via WhatsApp or so, and only via phone or SMS or things like that. But if that wouldn't be a problem, I probably had switched to like an analog phone and something not so digital and with kind of like less distractions. I mean, Twitter alone is like the worst distraction ever, right? And I'm not even like popular on Twitter, but I get like, I don't know, 10 to 15 notifications each day. And it's like, oh yeah, what's up? Oh yeah. I'm just replying real quick. And now 1 or 2 hours are gone because you got like into a discussion with someone or sharing opinions or just making a tiny little screencast for someone. Yeah, it's the worst.
I've got the same thing, man. So honestly, in my case, it would be my father who would get most upset if I switched to an old school phone. I think my girlfriend would actually get by well enough because she likes to call. But my father actually is a big WhatsApper for some reason. And my WhatsApp bio is actually, please call me. I may not respond quickly. And he hates that. He's actually coming over for dinner tonight. And he's probably going to bring it up again because the idea of not immediately replying back to a text or picking up the phone. He always picks up the phone. Even if he's not available, he'll just tell you I'm not available. If I don't pick up the phone, I'm not available, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I get it, man. It's so have you done anything currently to minimize the outside noise that you're receiving from social media, alarm clocks, whatever?
Kind of. So there's a tiny little Mac app. I honestly forgot the name about, but it's kind of like a social media blocker, so that you have like, okay, you have 1 hour a day to participate in social media, and I mean, Twitter's like 99% of social media for me is Twitter. I'm not using like Facebook anymore or Instagram, not really into like sharing nice images from, I don't know, anywhere in the world. So yeah, that helped a lot. I'm also like having scheduled time slots for emails. So I check my email inbox like 2 times a day, and usually that's fine because most of my projects and businesses aren't really time critical. So for people, it's fine as long as they get like a decent reply back, and they can see that I put in the time to really read what they're looking for and provide helpful answers. That's usually completely fine for people in my network, for my customers, for pretty much everyone I'm in touch with.
Do you sometimes get emails from customers with a title that's urgent in all caps? Like,
Yeah.
what do you do when that happens?
I mean, hopefully not that many customers will listen to our little podcast episode here, but usually if I see something like a zap or urgent or please reply now or whatever it's called, and usually it's like all caps, I kind of deprioritize these folks first. So they only get a reply once I'm done with all the other emails and checking social media and whatnot. They still get like a reply within like, I don't know, 24 hours or so, but they're absolutely not like first priority in any way.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, or rather maybe fortunately for those people sending out those emails, we do always read them because our infrastructure is, critical. Like if our infrastructure goes down, multiple websites per customer go down. So we do have to obviously read it because it may mean that the infrastructure is down. Although finding out that the infrastructure is down via our customers is never going to happen. We would know before anybody else would.
Yeah.
But even so, but yeah, no, like after reading it, 9 out of 10 times, it's something someone else fucked up.
No.
So yeah, it's in the beginning I was very distressed, and that goes back to when I was an agency owner and not the co-founder of a SaaS platform. But especially when I was still running an agency, I noticed that I was very sensitive to the ups and downs of customers, and you have to babysit people a little bit more. And actually, my co-founder Bijnand made a comment about this the other day, that he had to teach himself to really empathize with the customer and realize that what we're building is something that they don't understand. So all the little things make a huge difference, where for us they're easily changed, or they're not a big deal. We can always optimize later. Yeah, that's something that is like closing off from. Let me ask you this: do you feel like you're a pleaser as a person, or are you can you easily shut that off?
I had trouble with shutting off for like at least 5 years straight or so. So really, for me, it was like a kind of like a long journey to learn that I don't have to be available 24/7, jumping straight into a phone call with a customer. I had an agency like, I don't know, 8 years ago or so, and was kind of in a similar situation. And I was always the first one people get in contact with via phone, via email, via live chat. I tried to defend my team. So I was the first contact point, and then I escalated the tasks to my team. And that was like really exhausting and absolutely not needed. So especially, well, also like from a customer perspective, no one expected me to be there like 24/7, but they kind of appreciated that it's always like a short line to get access to me and my time. But that also meant that was kind of like out of the actual business stuff, so I couldn't work on client projects myself. I couldn't work on the overall strategy or improving like processes for all customers because I was so fed up with like the day-to-day business and communicating, and that took quite a while. Now that I'm in another position, so like a product company, it's still hard to like not get pulled into every conversation, every live chat, every email coming in. But I think it's part of the journey of an entrepreneur to learn to manage your own time and to use it efficiently, and to have like stepping back from the actual day-to-day business and work on the business, not just in the business.
Yeah, makes. What made you change your mind? What was the moment you started building a product instead of owning an agency, and what was the first product you built?
So I started to realize that this whole agency thing wasn't for me in the long term, as the demand kept up. So having like maintenance plans for existing customers and emails sliding in with, hey, can you change this little thing? And oh, we have this new campaign running. Can you build a little newsletter sequence or whatever? And at the same time, pitching for for newer clients, going to conferences, pitching for really big companies, doing all the contract work and all that stuff, onboarding new members to the team. I think at the end we were like 8 people or so, 3 designers, 3 devs, one kind of management secretary, not really like a product manager or like a time manager, but someone just kept or made sure that we pay all the bills, that all contracts going out at the right time, and me obviously juggling all the tasks at once. So yeah, that was kind of annoying. The more we grow, the harder it was for me to like let go and not be involved in any or in all of the tasks. And we got acquired from a company that hasn't done any client work, and instead focused on building plugins for WooCommerce. And
Right.
that was kind of like they onboarded me and my entire team into the company, and the company almost doubled in size. So they had 10 people at that time, and now we together we were almost at 20 now. And we tackled new plugin projects, and I learned like step by step what it means to run a product company. I've seen the difference between how do you manage an agency and a product company, and I really enjoyed my time there. And I stepped up from like junior dev to senior dev, and later managing like 3 devs below me, and had really the power to change something while still keeping like a healthy work-life balance. And during that time, I started scratching my little entrepreneur itch and started developing my own plugins at that time. I think my very first one, and I still maintain it today, is my password protection plugin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it's almost like 10 years old, or at least 9 years old now. And it was like just a tiny little side project, which was fun. It was a little bit nerdy, and I really love people reaching out, asking for things like, hey, can we improve the encryption? It's not like, how does it work or it doesn't work? So it's really a specific technical thing, and I really got into nerd mode and improved it further and further and adapted to changes in WordPress, things like integrating the customizer back in the day, to like modify the password form and changing colors and all that stuff. And that was fun. And in, I think it was 2018 or so, I integrated Freemius as a payment provider to offer a way to deliver like a premium version to the plugin. And Honestly, I would have never thought getting like more than, I don't know, 100, $200 a month or so from it. But the revenue increased quite quickly. So by the end of 2018, it already generated like $1,000 a month or so. And it was just like this one tiny little product. And over the years, I kept adding new products to my portfolio. And then COVID came, and I thought, okay, now I have like quite a lot of time because I just quitted my job and was about to go full time into business and freelance and all that stuff again. And yeah, finding clients during COVID was quite of a journey and not that successful. So I thought, okay, maybe it's time for building like a huge plugin thing. And that's where I started working on Simply Static. Now the most popular static site generator for WordPress, even if you take like software as a service solutions into consideration, Simply Static is still the most popular. I'm not saying it's the best. It's kind of biased if I would to, but at least it's the most popular solution. And the growth of Simply Static was like kind of surprising. So it really skyrocketed from like, I think I started with like, I don't know, 5,000 active installations on WordPress.org. Now we have like 50,000 and
Wow.
15,000 pro users, which is like for a plugin is like a lot. And don't get me wrong, Simply Static is expensive. So we're starting from like $99 per year, which is kind of pricey for a plugin, but it also does kind of a lot and allows you to go fully static from your WordPress website without any technical knowledge at all.
It's so impressive. If I may wind back a little bit, you mentioned that at the time when you quit your job and you wanted to start as a freelancer and then a pandemic hit, what kind of freelancing did you have in mind?
So I had a couple of contacts from my time at the company building WooCommerce projects. And I had a couple of contacts before that time from my agency. Most of them were enterprise companies using WordPress in like kind of a special way. So we had like an e-commerce store, for example, that is only accessible if you have like an officially government supported company here in Germany. And so we had to make sure like having an entire authentication process before the shop, and also like need to make sure via external APIs that they haven't lost the status within like the last 3 months or so, because you as a government supported company, you can buy their products for like a really cheap price, but you have to use them in a certain way to support like poverty. I don't know what's the word for it. So basically everything related to public health, public support, fighting poverty. So there's an entire catalog of restrictions people have to follow with these products. But if they follow them, they can really buy a lot of stuff for like insane prices. And
Wow.
that's something that is pretty much will be never covered by WooCommerce alone, or not even by things like Shopify or bigger e-commerce systems like Magento or so, because it's like way too specific and way too many regulations in place. And yeah, I kept like 10 of these enterprise customers at a time usually, and got paid for custom plugin development and maintaining the entire solution, building this kind of projects on top of WordPress and WooCommerce. So yeah, that was fun, but people quickly canceled or paused their subscription for maintaining solutions once it was clear we're getting into the middle of the lockdown and no one really knew how long it will take to reopen their business, to get access to all the suppliers again, and so on.
So that part sounds very familiar, and it's exactly the, you could say, the jumping off point for our own development of the platform. But in your case, the jump from building, or rather working on e-commerce shops that are government supported, that have this extended and very hard identification process, to Simply Static, how did that come to be? Did you somehow get inspired by your freelance work, or was it something that you always wanted to do based on a different source of inspiration?
It actually resulted from a customer project. So we had one store. I don't even know what they were selling at the time. It was something like an air cleaner or so. Nothing like super rocket science special, but at that time it was kind of like an innovation thing. And they planned commercials in TV, and they had this. I mean, the server wasn't like bad, but it wasn't really optimized for scale, and we were expecting like, I don't know, 100,000 unique visits per minute or so. So something really big. And they were worried that the shop and the website itself couldn't handle it. I mean, we see that pretty much every day if you follow shows like Shark Tank or so, where people pitch their startup and the website goes down because there's so much traffic in such a short amount of time.
And they're on a cheap hosting plan because they can't afford anything else. Yeah.
I mean, it was a dedicated server, but it was like the cheapest dedicated server that you can get. So
of course,
I think they probably, without, even with like caching, they probably would be able to like handle, I don't know, 1,000 visitors per minute or so. So, and I wondered, okay, isn't there like an easier way to handle that situation? And I came across a couple of approaches converting WordPress to a static website, but none of them are maintained anymore. So there are a couple of, if you look for static site generator WordPress, you may find something like Static Press, which isn't maintained anymore. I think the latest update is from 2019 or so. There was a tool called WP2 Static. And I'm friend with the developer behind this project, but the main problem was maintenance. So he was really ambitious on the project and really like, he wanted to get it working, but it was always kind of too technical for someone that isn't like a developer himself to use, because it was like CLI first, and the UI was kind of not broken, but just not that intuitive. And I thought, okay, maybe I can do better. So I built a tiny little solution for that particular client. We used it and it worked extremely well. So we had like at peak, I don't know, 60,000 users or visitors per minute. And the server absolutely didn't care. It was like, if there's nothing going on at all there.
Wow, very impressive. And so, okay, so I can imagine having the success with something you've built in this particular instance, it just sits with you, right? That this is something that you can't really let go of. So I want to, but still, I mean, this is not something that you picked up as soon as you did the project, right? Like this, like how long since the project and the start of Simply Static? How much time was there in between?
So the solution I initially built, as usual, if you have ever worked like as an agency or a freelancer, you will know that like the implementation you do for a client and having like a fully fledged product is like two different worlds. So it was like the bare minimum implementation that just worked, and now I had to build like the entire UI and everything around it, and handling all the edge cases, and let alone the fact that you have to like replace URLs is like a horrible thing, because you have to like know regex patterns and validate URLs, and is there a trading slash in the end or not, and what do you do? And it was a kind of a lot of work, but it took me about 6 months or so to go from like the initial MVP to a fully fledged working product that is now used by quite a few.
And in between, the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
Wow. So it was almost like a perfect storm, really.
Yeah. And I don't think I would have done it without COVID. So not like I'm a fan of COVID or anything, but for that particular case, it was actually a good thing, because without COVID, I would have been busy with like client work and maybe other projects, and I would have never stumbled upon that particular use case. Because I mean, if we think about static websites, you always think of like the early beginnings of the internet, and everything was built with HTML. And who would have thought that static websites getting like trendy again, and like a cool solution to like a pretty big problem that we have today, because of like complex deployment processes and complex hosting setups, from like load balancing things, and you have like a different database store, and you have like your file systems and whatnot. And now we can have like a static website that runs pretty much on the €1 per month package on GoDaddy. And it's still pretty scalable and easy to update and all of that.
I do kind of completely relate to having a tool that you use internally as an agency and then turning it into a platform or turning it into a product. It's totally different. Like, we spent a couple of months building our UI, and when it was done, it took a couple more months before other people could easily use it. It was just like like there's buttons now, doesn't mean it's UX, right? It was, hard times. How did you scale? Like, how did you start marketing your solution?
I think I got quite lucky, because tools like Gatsby, for example, Gatsby is like this huge headless. I think they also have like a WordPress integration. It's this huge venture capital backed static site generator thing, and they kind of done marketing for me accidentally, because they're like, okay, here's this new thing, and this new thing is actually a static site generator. And I was like, hey, yeah, I mean, Simply Static is like Gatsby for WordPress, without all the hassle you have with like configuration files, and you have to like compile anything. No, you just install it, activate it, and you can click a button and it will do everything for you. So my main marketing approach always was like static site generator, but without all the hassle you get from the other alternatives there out there.
And did you write articles, or did you just, I don't know, like how did people find you in the first place?
Yeah, so I write a lot of tutorials. It's kind of like my main marketing approach is like, let's call it content marketing, but it's really a lot about writing tutorials. Things like, I don't know, how to host WordPress on Cloudflare Pages, for example. Cloudflare Pages is like a huge, I mean, most of these folks listening to us later will know Cloudflare, and Cloudflare has a hosting server or hosting provider, which is free for like 99% of use cases. So you have to really work hard to make to get to the paid plan of Cloudflare Pages. And I noticed people searching for how to host WordPress on Cloudflare Pages, for example. So I wrote a tutorial about it. Then I noticed that while there are a couple of static site generators out there already, no one covers important topics around having a static site. It starts with things like, how do forms work on a static website, right? So, I mean, each website these days has some kind of form, be it like a newsletter sign up form or just a contact form. And no one wants to use like a static website if forms don't work. So I made a tutorial about how forms work, different providers available, how you can make it work on your own server. I've done the same with like search or analytics. People kept asking if like Google Analytics is working on a static website. I mean, yeah, sure, it works. It's just JavaScript sending events to your Google Analytics account, but it wasn't clear from the user perspective that these things just work the same way on a static website as they work on like a WordPress website, for example. So
that's interesting. It's it also is something that we notice, is that sometimes people need answers to obvious questions, not necessarily because they don't know the answers, is that they're not sure if the answer is still true.
yeah,
And that is such a big thing, right? In terms of service, in terms of creating content around your product, is sometimes you need to answer the obvious questions that to you are, of course, and to them
yeah,
as well. Even it's just a confirmation that things are still the same, and that actually makes your product more appealing because
yeah,
it now fits very well in their existing workflow. But if you don't answer those questions, just like Google Analytics or a form, I mean, because as you say, every website these days needs some form of interaction, right? Whether it's checking out of a store or simply signing up to a newsletter.
yeah.
Um, how did you identify this as an opportunity to market your product?
Mainly so in the early days of Simply Static, support was like kind of overwhelming. So I got like, I don't know, 100 messages a day or so asking all kinds of questions, from like things like, is Google Analytics working on a static website, to
Wow.
how do I set up my WordPress website on Cloudflare Pages, for example. So my answer to that was like sitting down for like at least 3 months and writing like 3 tutorials each week to cover all of these cases. And that got quite popular. So I got linked from like thousands of different blogs and websites. A lot of people tried Simply Static and wrote blog articles about it. Things like, hey, here's an easy way to make your WordPress website static for better performance and security. And you don't have to maintain like an updated WordPress website, because as soon as it is static, it doesn't matter if you do your updates. So if you like to stay with like WordPress 3.5 for whatever reason, you can do that without getting like into any security issues, because your WordPress website is separated from your static one, and it only changes if you run a new export.
I just realized we're half an hour into the conversation and we never took the time to define what a static website is. So if you just give me a quick explanation for people that are just tuning in and don't understand it, I'll edit it and paste it in the front of the podcast so that everybody is on the same page as we start. All right, go.
So a static website is basically a flattened version of your existing website. You can either convert your existing website into a static one, or you can build a static website from scratch. The main difference between a static and a dynamic one is that a dynamic website needs some kind of server interaction, usually done with like PHP or Python or some kind of dynamic programming language, and a server, and like in 99% of the cases, also a database to store and retrieve data. And the static website is basically just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There's no database interaction, because at the point where a customer or a user or a visitor visits your website, everything is already fetched, combined, compiled, whatever. So there is no active database connection happening here. And there's also no dynamic interaction. So you can host your static website on services that doesn't even like support PHP, for example.
And the effect, just to make it very obvious, to an owner of a static website is that you can now receive 60,000 visits per second or per minute, you said?
Yeah. Per second works just as well. So there are like usually 4 main points considering going static. One is scalability. So you don't have to worry about scalability at all if you run a static site static website. So that's one thing, and that's kind of challenging if you think about like a huge app or so. Making that scalable is like a huge task, and you can completely eliminate that problem with going to a static site setup. Number 2 is performance. That's especially noticeable if you're coming from a WordPress background. So having like my most recent example is like consider like a multilingual website done with WPML and a couple of other plugins, which even with things like caching, it performs okayish, but never like 100 of 100 page speed score, right? Because of the database interactions needed to provide like on-demand translated strings for all the languages you want to provide. With a static site setup, that process is already done because each language is already brought together. There's no database interaction happening. So you get like the maximum page speed, even when using like a multilingual setup. If you want to see it in action, you can visit dash.org, for example. They are using Simply Static and WPML, and they have like, I don't know, 20 different languages or so. And the website is like incredibly fast. So
wow,
it's a pretty decent use case for static websites and or especially for multilingual projects.
Nice, man. And it works for. Sorry, go on.
Another point, it's not that sexy as performance, but it's still important, is like security. So static websites are like almost unhackable because of the reason that you don't have like a database connected and you don't have the ability to execute malicious code in any way. There isn't really a chance for a hacker to exploit anything, to grab customer data, to inject malicious code, even to like, I don't know, write some spammy comments on your comment form or so. So that's a huge point as well.
It works for certain use cases and it doesn't really work for others, right? So yeah. Can you explain there?
So it works best for anything content related. Let's say you have like a big blog with like thousands of articles. That's pretty good use case because hosting such a blog is usually kind of expensive, even if you're like not have monetized it in any way. Media heavy websites, career portals, things like that. Or even things like websites for photographers, for example. So hosting like image heavy websites is usually like tricky, and it isn't that easy to make things like backups and even hosting that thing. And with a static website setup, that's kind of easy because the backup is usually just like zipping the FTP content. So that makes things a lot easier. Where it gets a little bit trickier is when you think of things like e-commerce, especially WooCommerce is like a problem because WooCommerce still isn't really optimized for being used in like a headless environment. There are things to make it work, but honestly, it's a nightmare right now. Even with things like Woo GraphQL and all that stuff available, it's just too hard for a customer to make that work and to use it reliably. So I absolutely not recommend it. There are other tools that make it quite easy. So, for example, there is a tool called OpenCart or SureCart. Both of them also have like a WordPress plugin that you can use to embed product pages and the checkout and all of that. And they work straight away because the transaction itself is made on a remote server and not on your actual website, and they just respond via API and update the cart and all that stuff.
Right.
So,
nice.
Yeah.
Good tip. I think so the good tip here is if you want to use a static website and still have an e-commerce solution, try looking into SureCart.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I recommend that anyway, even if you're like not going the static website route. But I was never like a really big fan of WooCommerce at all because like we have this huge thing, and I know it's like hugely popular and people making a lot of money with extensions and plugins and whatnot. But there's also like a huge risk to self-hosting e-commerce products, especially if you're not willing to like invest a lot of money into a good hosting provider and having someone to actually care about the website, make updates, check everything is still working, and so on. So using an external provider who works on everything for you, so keeps the server up to date, makes sure every transaction is recorded correctly, makes sure there are regular backups running that are actually working and are restorable. It's like, for me, it's such a huge relief to have like trusted partners to outsource things to, instead of like hosting everything on my own.
I think that's a beautiful segue into the relationship that we have currently. But you can basically define it in we have the same mission statement in that sense, which is do what you do best and delegate the rest. Like there's only a finite things of things you can give a fuck about, but there's way more things that are actually important. And so really what you want is you want to focus on the stuff that you are passionate about, that you know you can actually do well if you have the time for it. And now the other, it's like hosting, like doing email, for example, was just a firm decision that we made not to do, so that we could actually focus on creating a scalable platform. Because Simply Static is not your only product.
Yeah.
What else have you got?
So there was a need over the last couple of months. We hit a particular use case with Simply Static, where Simply Static just wasn't really a good fit. We're talking, so there's one particular use case that is archiving existing websites. Imagine you have like a WordPress website, maybe it's even a big one, and you want to, it wasn't updated in like 5 years or so. It's still running on PHP 5.3, whatnot. And you don't want to really maintain it anymore, but you still need, or you still want to keep like the entire website and all the images, all the content, maybe to recycle it later or to just host it somewhere else without the need of having to maintain the WordPress website. And here's where Webtozip.com steps in. It's basically an abstraction layer to Simply Static that is not limited to WordPress at all. So you can download pretty much any kind of website with it. And it takes away all the pressure we're kind of putting on you when you install Simply Static, because Simply Static is like a huge complex thing, and it does require certain things. Things like at least PHP 7.4, at least WordPress 6.0, at least a more or less up-to-date MySQL version, for example. And these things, especially considered like an unmaintained WordPress website, usually breaks the website. So if you upgrade a WordPress website that is running on PHP 5.3 to PHP 8, I don't know. I if I can avoid it, I would avoid it, because things will break. There are plugins that are no longer existent. Maybe your theme isn't even maintained anymore. So things will break, and the chances are that they break are like pretty high. So Web2Zip is basically the answer to handle that, but it's also so much more. So the basic idea was to develop a tool that is insanely easy to use, even for non-WordPress people, but at the same time solving scalability with Wildcloud. Because building Simply Static as a scalable product, if we think about things like, I don't know, Laravel, for example, there is an option to port like this entire thing to Laravel and kind of try to make it maintainable. But I would argue one thing, financially, it might not make sense to do it. And it's also a thing of technical skill set. So do you have the knowledge, the time, and the skill set to build that? And is it more maintainable than having like a scalable solution based on the things you know, and a provider like Wildcloud to make it scalable out of the box and ensure maintainability for like 10 years to come? So with our current setup, I can like easily scale my little Zest tool to like thousands of exports per minute without even like having to touch the code at all. I can easily roll out updates with a version manager included in Wildcloud. So I have like one version for developing new features, testing things, and I have like a stable version that I roll out to all the tenants to make new updates available pretty quickly if I have to, but I'm also not like pressured to fix one particular bug right now. If it only happens in a certain setup, I can just update a particular tenant, for example, and test it out with like a couple of beta testers. And once it works fine, I can easily roll it out to all of my tenants.
Sweet. I mean, this is exactly what we build a platform for, and we build it for you. You could say, because you described the perfect situation of how you should use it. But what's the customer journey for your customer? Like, how do they get in touch with the product? How do they start using it? And in which particular case would they feel the benefit of it?
Yeah. So to start with Webtozip, it couldn't get really easier. You can just visit the homepage, and there's a little form at the top of the website where you can add your URL, add an email address. We need that because we sent you a zip file of your website to that particular email address, and you can just click download website. If you're using the free plan, there's a little limitation. So one thing is it's limited to 200 pages or files per download, and there's also like a global queue system. So if you're on the free plan, you share the queue with all other people that are submitting a free download right now. And you can also go with like 24. I just recently added like a 24-hour day pass, so which is kind of cheap and tackles a particular use case for people that just want to archive their website, but it's like bigger and they don't want to wait for the global queue to get to their project. So they can pay $4.99 once, get access for 24 hours, and can, during that time, they can run unlimited exports if they want to. But usually they just want to have like one export, but it's a bigger website. So that's like the most basic use case. But Webtozip is kind of flexible and tackles different personas. So we have like the usual customer with like, I want to archive my website and I want to keep all the images, videos, HTML files, whatsoever. Another popular customer segment we have, and where I'm right now working to improve like the onboarding and the feature set Webtozip provides for them, is digital agencies and translation agencies. In the next couple of weeks, I will release a little free tool that you can embed onto your own website, maybe even with like a WordPress plugin, where people can add their URL and click a button, and they get back in return the number of pages, the number of images, maybe, and also things like the number of words that this website contains, for example. So imagine like a translation agency having like a quick widget on their website, and they can tell the customer immediately, based on the number of words, their price per word, and the hours they need to finish the job. Okay, your translation job will approximately take 10 hours or so, without even like calculating them themselves or having to like scan the website manually, things like that. It's just a click of a button, completely automated for them. And that's a huge thing for translation agencies. And it works in a similar way. Yeah. And I think it works in a similar way for digital agencies. So one option is to have like a similar onboarding calculation flow with calculating based on the number of pages, but also for generally for things like doing a relaunch. Imagine you're getting a customer and he's using this old paid closed source page builder. Like, I don't want to trash anyone, but you know what I'm talking about. There are some page builders that aren't really that nice, especially compared to WordPress. And if you have one of these, they usually don't provide any export at all. So what are you doing when you're planning a relaunch? You log into some kind of clunky dashboard and you try to get out the content, get out the images. Maybe there are even like videos or PDF files or whatsoever. What you can do now with Webtozip is add the URL, add your email address, or just log into the dashboard where you can like download all your files. click on the button, wait a couple of seconds, or if it's really a big website, it might take up to 2 minutes or 3, but you get a notification email once the process is done. And you have all the images, all the videos, all the PDF files, and all the pages. And what you will soon be able to do is extract not like the entire HTML, but either plain text that you can just copy and paste into WordPress, or like a cleaned HTML version, which especially with things like the blog editor make it easier than ever to relaunch a website, because you get like, okay, this is a cleaned HTML version and it just contains like H tags, P tags, links, but not like any div containers and span tags and whatsoever. Just clean HTML, copy it, paste it into the blog editor, and voila, you have a fully formatted working page, cleaned. Everything is fine. We strip all the tags, all the classes, all that stuff for you. So yeah, that's, I think, a really valuable tool in terms of doing relaunches.
So Patrick, I appreciate your modesty in not naming any names, but it's actually the people that know the least about web development that are in need of this the most, because they're most likely on something that they want to get rid of. So if you're comfortable, could you maybe call out some names that would work particularly well with this service if they wanted to migrate over to the blog editor?
So I have added a couple of examples. If you check webtozip.com/use cases, where I also name a couple of popular services that are a good fit, and they're not like because I hate them. It's just based on user data. So people using these services submit to Webtozip fairly often. I think the most common one is Wix.com, which is like a perfect example of a missing export tool, and it's kind of hard to get out the content from them. Webflow.com is also a popular example. Framer is like this new shiny web editor thing, which is like nice to create, but kind of expensive if you want to host with them. And if you create the website on Framer, you have to host them on Framer. With Webtozip, you can still create your website in Framer, but you don't have to host it there. So you can just strip it away and host it yourself. I know these tools will absolutely hate what I'm doing with my tool, but I mean, I think it should be up to the customer to decide where you want to host your website, and not like being forced to use things like Framer. And Framer also charges like a huge amount of money for hosting if you run like a multilingual website. And I think other tools like Wix.com will follow the same pricing strategy.
Webflow's already doing it as well.
Yeah. So I don't think you should pay like, I don't know, $50 a month for a multilingual website for your little restaurant, for example, just to provide your customers an easy and understandable way to read your menu, for example.
I want to say, I actually read this about Webflow. I want to say this week on Twitter, of course. But apparently they've updated their prices, and now every translation is $25 per month.
Yeah.
So good luck with that. No, and to be honest, man, I think you're a great crusader, because vendor lock-in is the main reason why we recommend people not to use any of those proprietary page builders or website builders, because at the end of the day, you don't own what you build. And it sounds to me as if you've finally democratized web development in such a way because you've provided an exit. Like this is the way to export in a way that the companies themselves don't even provide. So no, I thank you for it, man. This is something I didn't know, that you could also use Webtozip in this way, and I'll definitely edit this bit out and post it on our social media to see if we can actually be of service to people there as well. So you can download any site, right?
Yeah.
So any site you fill in, even if you don't own it, in that sense.
Yeah.
So feasibly, you could say, I want to use a site as inspiration, download it, and then turn it into WordPress. And then obviously it doesn't do you any good if you would duplicate the site, but it could serve as a pretty good foundation, maybe to schools or maybe just designers who want to do want to build.
That's actually one of the other user personas I'm targeting is for one thing is to like offline learning. So imagine things like Udemy, you have that course, you own it. I mean, you still have to buy the course, right? But I think they already provide like an offline option if you have the app. But if you don't have the app, you could use Webtozip, authenticate with your login credentials, and download all the videos from the course you already bought. And let's say you're on like a 12-hour flight from Europe to America, for example, you can just consume the content without being online at all. But also for people stepping into web development, you find this shiny, really cool website from like a hip startup with like a cool animation effect done in JavaScript, and you want to see how it's done and how it works, and if you can replicate it, you can download the entire HTML website, which also contains all of the JavaScript, and dig into it and kind of reverse engineer what's happening and try out to replicate it and even like modify it, for example.
That's so cool, man. That's I think it's a really neat trick to just look under the hood of actual sites and just, play with it.
Yeah. I mean, we have kind of like a dynamic blacklist for people. I mean, it's obviously if you have like you provide a software service solution that downloads websites, people try to game the system. So we have like a dynamic block list, for example. So which contains things like google.com, for example, or youtube.com. So we don't have to want to deal with like, hey, I just submitted youtube.com. Can you please download this 10 terabyte website from me? So yeah, and we also have like things like an active monitoring in the background, so I can see live how many pages and files we actually fetch from a particular website. And if it's really a big website, we have an additional verification step. So I once tried it with post status, for example. I'm sorry, post status, but it was just an experiment and everything worked as expected. So post status is like a really big website. And I tried to export it to test like our dynamic limitation solution. And it worked quite well because we fetched like 5,000 files and pages and files. And then it stopped because, okay, there's a pretty big website and crawling an entire website is like a resource heavy process, not only for like Webtozip, but also for the actual website. And we got blocked by the user agent. And what we're doing right now is, in case we see that the process is running quite a lot and we get different returns from the website, we stop the process and do something similar to Google Webmaster Tools, where you have like a little confirmation HTML file that you have to upload to your FTP server. And we check that, and if it's there, if it's kind of like verified, we still do like the entire download for you.
I'm still amazed that this is a product that runs on Wildcloud, because as you can imagine, this is not something that we ever expected to facilitate. But just to give me an idea, so basically what you do is you download the site, and then it becomes available as a WordPress site on our platform as a tenant that people get access to, that they can download, and then after 24 hours you delete it again.
We have like, it's a little bit different. So we have on the website itself, there's an app running which is built on top of React and Supabase. Supabase is kind of like, if people are familiar with Firebase, it's like the open source alternative to it. It's basically our source of truth. So it's like the global database containing the subscription-related data, the job data, and then we have the tenants running on Wildcloud. These tenants are like single WordPress installations where they run on headless mode, so there's no like actual front end there. And they have Simply Static installed and like a little connector plugin which connects to the Supabase database. So if you submit a job on the website, it gets submitted to Supabase, and the tenants check regularly via a cron job if there's a new job and if the tenant is currently available. Because if an export is running on the tenant, it's kind of blocked for Supabase. So we do that with a little REST API request. Supabase asks the tenant, hey, are you running an export right now? And if not, here's a new job for you to do. And then it starts doing the export. And once the export is finished, I know it sounds a little bit over-engineered, but I just wanted to make sure it's really scalable. So once the process is finished for the tenant, it pings back to our service with the answer, okay, I'm done now. I'm free to take any new job you might have for me. And at the same time, it uploads the created zip file to an AWS S3 storage. And that S3 storage generates the unique download link for the user, which then gets forwarded via email.
I love it. It's great. How many tenants do you expect to need to facilitate, I don't know, the growth that you want to have?
I think for right now we're running with like 5 or 6 tenants, but I think we will outgrow them pretty quickly. So right now it works well because we have one free tenant for all the free submissions, but I think I have to increase the free tenants at least to, let's say, 3 or so by the end of the year, just to make it like still usable to have like the free submission. And I try to like don't have to have people to wait too long. So I think like 30 minutes or an hour or so is fine if you submit it for free, but I don't want to be edited up to like 5 hours or so just to get a little download. I think we have to scale the pro. So I basically differentiated between free tenants. I kind of prefix them simply in the Wildcloud dashboard. So there's like tenant free and tenant pro, and tenant free is only running jobs that are submitted as a free tool, and tenant pro submits basically everything that is running from the pro dashboard. And yeah, I mean the configuration is so performant right now that we can export. I just tried it with like the Wildcloud website before we started our call right now, and it took like 2.5 minutes to download the entire website, and it's like, I don't know, 800 pages and files or so. So it's not like a super small website, and that just took like 2.5 minutes, which is like kind of insane.
Also,
for
all
this
the pages
entire...
all the pages that we're hiding from people right now, right?
Yeah.
Well, people, don't try to download our website. There's a lot of pages that we're not ready to show yet.
I mean, you can also, if you have like, we have like an internal validator for such things. So for example, we respect the robots.txt file, for example. If you have excluded certain directories in your robots.txt file, we're never gonna download them.
Oh, really? Interesting.
The same is true for things like basic authentication. We can actually download content behind basic authentication, but you have to explicitly confirm it, and you have to provide the basic auth credentials for us to fetch pages protected with basic authentication.
Nice.
And yeah, so we're trying to be like the good guys as much as possible, especially
Ethical.
in a business space where a lot of shady things happening.
Fair enough.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. Business espionage is a real thing, and it sounds that your platform can feasibly be used to benefit those typical organizations. So
Yeah.
what's next? What's your prognosis? What is what's next on the roadmap? How do you expect this to grow and scale?
Yeah. So right now, it's kind of tricky if you're like a technical founder and you love developing new stuff and adding just a tiny new little feature. So new features are on the roadmap and they will come more sooner than later. Things like having like a REST API integration, or the ability to schedule exports so that you can run them like daily, weekly, monthly or so automatically without even touching anything. Also things like webhook support. Imagine things like you export a website with Webtozip and then you trigger a Zapier task to upload it to Netlify, for example, or to, I don't know, combine it with, that's a funny little use case. And it's maybe something we do like an official collaboration with PDF.ai. So imagine downloading your website as a zip file, as a PDF file, and automatically uploading it to PDF.ai. And now you can chat with like any website on the planet. It's a fun use case. I'm not sure what PDF AI is thinking about it, but we will at least try to work actively on collaborations with additional tools to make it really easy to fulfill certain tasks.
Nice.
So yeah, that's one thing. The other thing is marketing, especially making people aware that that kind of tool can be used in like a variety of different use cases, which I think we can tackle a lot with things like tutorials and videos, but also with like directly reaching out to people, onboarding them, explaining the concept, explaining the benefits, and also making sure it's not like too technical. I mean, I kind of think we need things like an REST API early on to force or to enable things like collaborations with other tools. But once we have like, I don't know, 10 collaborations running, I think it's time to make it follow the same marketing strategy as I've done it with Simply Static, and explain this concept to non-technical users or less technical users to really get into like a bigger market.
Right. Because on that subject, you did mention that Simply Static is now a rather complex tool to use. You need to be, somewhat of a developer to understand it or to use it. Any plans to make that more widely available to people that don't have such a technical background?
Yeah, so that was like the initial starting point for Webtozip, was to provide the flexibility of Simply Static, but without like the technical knowledge. You already see that if you visit webtozip.com, there are like just two settings on purpose, right? Email and URL. And we don't ask any additional questions. And even if you have like the pro dashboard, you have to actively toggle on the advanced mode to get like additional features, because most people don't even know the difference between like downloading a website for offline usage and online usage. And even with like tooltips and all that stuff, it's still hard to grasp the concept behind it. So I really try to keep it simple, make it flexible, but also like not getting into the same user base as I've done it with Simply Static.
Right. And so I can imagine that the next step for Simply Stat, or rather for Webtozip, would be to create a static website from any website that you have built with Wix, for example.
I mean, that's kind of like an easy win for the tool because of the popularity of Simply Static. So you can immediately say things like, okay, if Simply Static is too complex for you, use Webtozip and you can achieve basically the same without any technical knowledge and without even worrying about your server or whatever, by doing this, for example. But I do try to not go too deep into the static generation part of the solution, because it's obviously one use case, but I think things like helping with quoting for translation and digital agency is also like a huge thing. And also things like one thing we didn't mention is like evidence. So what you can also do with web, I think it was Unity. Unity is like this huge game development framework thing that is used for all AAA video games right now. And they had this thing with like they removed their terms and conditions page from their GitHub repository with the explanation that no one was viewing it. And after they removed it, they drastically increased their pricing. What you can do with Webtozip right now is like make a copy of that particular page, save it somewhere, then take a new copy in like a month from now, and then compare both with like a simple file comparison tool. So
Nice.
at a Mac, we have like a tool called Kaleidoscope or so, which can like show you differences between files. And that's exactly what you can do with like Web2Zip. So you can easily keep track of changes. It's
Wow.
also like in good for the actual company. So let's say you get into a legal case because someone said, hey, you have changed your terms and conditions and you haven't notified us as customers. And you can use Web2Zip and make like time-stamped exports every week, every month, whatsoever, and provide evidence that you haven't, that nothing has changed that would require like a notification to your customers, for example.
Wow. So it could turn into a bit of a compliance tool for, I mean, say, attorney practices or any legal company that would recommend it to their larger clients and say, hey, it's a good idea if you make a backup of your site every now and again, simply so that you can be, have the actual evidence when you do. In the United States, I can imagine that this to be to be a pretty popular tool if you do it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of, I think it's a pretty interesting use case, but at the same time, it feels at least almost impossible to get to that particular customer segment. So because I have like no real connection to any legal partners or like IT security companies or whatsoever that would care about that kind of use case. But I think it's an important one, and I can see if I find a way to reach that segment in one way or another, I can definitely see that as a pretty valid use case for Webtozip as well.
I can imagine that a company such as Rocket Lawyer, that offers contracts. So you can download template for contracts. I can imagine that if you were to contact them at any point in time and show them like what this thing can do, I can see them doing a partnership with you where they say, hey, this is another service that we offer.
Yeah.
Because it's in the same realm, but it's not competing with anything they do right now.
Yeah.
Nice add-on. I think we have to wrap up just to make this podcast a little digestible for people, because I feel like we could talk for at least another hour.
Yeah.
And maybe we should actually do one in the future where we pick up where we left off. But I do want to close with, if you could, because then I can use that little snippet again to share it with people. What's the pitch for Web2Zip if you were to pitch it in 30 seconds?
Yeah. So Web2Zip is the all-in-one website downloader that offers the ability to go static in a couple of seconds with your website, provide an evidence in case of any legal case you might face, work offline on your course project or web project or whatever, and also make it simpler than ever to quote a website or translation project for your future customer.
And I still can't believe it's all hosted on Wildcloud. I did ask if you were going to WordCamp Germany, but you're not, aren't you?
Yeah. Sadly not.
Too bad. I would love to meet you in person. Which country? Which city are you based again?
I'm from Berlin, so I'm just a tiny bit outside of the center of Berlin. It's like, I don't know.
Where do you live?
50 minutes with a car or so.
Where do you live in Berlin?
I'm in north of Berlin.
Mm-hmm. Which quarter? Which area? I mean.
Yeah. Is it? I don't know. Do we translate those things? Prenzlauer Berg is like the German pronunciation.
I don't think you should translate Prenzlauer Berg. Nice, man. I used to live in Berlin myself, and I spent my entire summer in Prenzlauer Berg last year for a month and a half. I didn't know you back then, but we should have hung out. That would have been fun.
Yeah, definitely.
I was supposed to go to the Elementor thing, which has now been postponed on November 1. So that would have been
Yeah.
a perfect moment, but maybe I'll come by anyways.
I thought of it as well. The only thing that bugged me a little bit about this whole Elementor conference thing was, what is it actually about? So, I mean, I get it. It's like, okay, it's an Elementor thing. We're talking about websites and how to use Elementor for whatever reason, but it's kind of like hidden behind I mean, is it hidden behind a paywall? I don't know, but there are things like, okay, what are we gonna talking about, and how many people get in, and what kind of people? Is there some kind of like promotional stuff happening, or is it like we have a keynote, or how many speakers are there, or is it more like a networking event? I have so many questions and little to no answers, but I thought the same. Yeah,
they're very, very valid questions. I immediately jumped on the opportunity to go and visit my friends in Berlin. So for me, that was like priority number one. And priority number two is I really liked people at Elementor. So anytime I can actually hang out with them, or especially with Miriam Schwab, I think she's a great person. She's one of your former, still competitors, is she not?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Stratic is like always my recommendation if we get like a pretty big company with like a huge catalog of like, okay, how do we perform in terms of GDPR, and can we follow that particular restriction, and where things are stored. And if I notice that this company is just too big to be handled with like our setup, and I mean, we're like 4 people right now. And Stratic is like, I don't know, 25 people or so. Yeah, at least 5x bigger than us. So, and I think like, especially enterprise projects are way better hosted on Stratic than done yourself with Simply Static. So
this is what I love about the WordPress community, is that people are so easy to point out when their product doesn't apply to the use case, and easy to point out to which alternative you can choose. It's not really regarded as a competitor per se. Obviously, you're in the same realm, and sometimes you may even be taking the same customers, but at the end of the day, collaboration is key. I love that.
Yeah.
Maybe a good note to finish on. I really enjoyed this with you, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, me too.
And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the last time. Let's say that.
Yeah.
All right, cool, man. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.